How can you become more confident by using reframing on your own thoughts, emotional reactions and thinking processes? We have to address this today, my friend, because I keep seeing a really healthy and good way of applying reframing to yourself and a really bad and damaging way that keep people stuck for their entire life. First of all, people who are great at developing their sense of self-confidence and who become really confident, they basically get better at decision making, which means they make better decisions for their life because they don't wait constantly for other people's approval before deciding on this or that or whatever. They get increased career opportunities because they dare to ask. They become bold enough to try to get access to a level in their career that they should not be able to access because they're not advanced enough, but they don't care, they still do it. And that is why their career is advancing much faster and much smoother, and they also get much stronger relationships around them, specifically in the personal space, because people who have developed a greater sense of self-confidence, they don't spend anymore their entire time saying to themselves that people don't like them, that people are judging them, and they are not really insecure anymore on that level. So they develop stronger relationships because they don't project their insecurities on their partner, on their romantic relationship, on people they work with, etc. So the main problem I am seeing with people who try to use reframing in personal development to try to become more productive, to increase their revenue or whatever, the big mistake I keep seeing is that they only try to work on what is apparent, on the physical appearance, not even on the physical shape side, but what is observable from the outside. So they try to reframe when they become tired or when they get angry, and they try to reframe that into their head as no, it is not happening, it is not happening, oh, it is fine, I'm doing great, I'm going well, it's going to be okay. And that is the worst possible way of trying to reframe something, because if you repress and suppress stuff inside, it will come out somewhere else. So all those lines about, yeah, you know, it is not failure, it is only feedback. Yeah, great NLP tool. Yes, those lines can be relevant at some point sometimes, if you have investigated enough what was a deeper issue. So another big problem I see is trying to copy, trying to take a role model, or trying to look like the image of somebody else who is not you, and trying to be exactly like that person and working as hard as this person, or just trying to act as confident as this person, whereas you don't have the internal belief system of that person. Therefore, those people get their mood that are just depending upon external factors and external validation. When others validate them, they feel great. When others don't validate them, they feel like shit. And then they think they have to reframe, why do people don't like me? No, you have to reframe, why did you take it personally in the first place? That is the whole thing. Yeah. So the process through which I have seen people getting much more confident over the years, obviously there is a huge part of healing bad trauma if you have been abandoned as a child or stuff like that. Obviously that is the first step before addressing any other points. But let's say you have dealt with the really big childhood issues. Let's say at least it is sufficiently covered so you don't have to constantly talk about it non-stop. Let's say this is at least enough covered. Then the main process I have seen people developing their self-confidence with is to build a sense of competence in at least one area that is really important to them. When people develop more self-worth, they know what they are worth. It is simply because they have, it comes from a sense of capabilities in at least one thing. You don't have to be great at everything. You don't have to be great at public speaking, at having a great physical shape, having the best job ever. You don't have to be great at everything. You have to be great at one thing. One thing, and it doesn't matter if society says it is bullshit, one thing that is relevant for you. You challenge your own limitations and insecurities into one thing that is really important for you. That might be a sport, that might be playing an instrument, that might be anything. You just develop your skills into one thing that is really part of you, part of who you are, and you keep challenging yourself and reframing the reasons why you think you can't challenge yourself because it is too difficult for you. Those are the things you challenge with reframing, but only within an area that really matters to you. So if you're passionate about drawing, for example, and yeah, it is not a high-paying job, it depends who you work for, but it is not a high-paying job, so I'm not really successful. Who cares? You develop skills in one thing that really matters for you. The right question I like to ask in that example, in that context, is if social media had never existed, so YouTube right here does not exist, Instagram does not exist, Twitter does not exist, none of that ever existed, what would you still be compelled about today? What would your mind naturally drift toward if you had eventually read books but never watched anything on social media and you were not even aware that some people are more successful or have a better body or they have a better girlfriend or boyfriend? You don't even know any of that, you just know what you are compelled about. What is it? What is that one thing? From there, once we have this one, this is where the whole reframing thing is going to come into play much more intelligently, because you are going to design one project or one goal or one outcome within that field of competence you definitely want to improve. You would definitely see yourself getting better if no one could judge, if there was not any need for money at all in society. Then what would be the one thing you would definitely still want to improve your skills into and eventually become number one, or at least become a pretty good skill level of skills. Once you have this clear project in mind, you just push the bubble and imagining what is the most difficult challenge I could set eventually for myself within that field. If you are passionate about drawing, for example, or about painting, okay, fine, what is the most difficult, intense challenge you could throw yourself into within that space? That might be to eventually propose a painting to a great museum and facing the rejections, yes, facing the rejections and accepting to get rejected as many times as it is required until you proceed and finally get your painting across the museum, whatever it is. You just select one thing that is extremely difficult, or like within that field of competence you legitimately feel drawn by. You notice what is the most difficult challenge you might get yourself into if you had much more confidence right now. Then we are going to reframe by asking, okay, how do you know it is so difficult? What is your evidence specifically that proves to you this challenge is really out of your reach, out of your skills? What is the evidence? And more specifically, what we want to figure out is it an internal evidence or some external evidence? So external is because people prevent me from, or because the world prevents me from, because the world is not accepting people like me, whatever. Okay, that is external. Internal is because I don't believe in myself, because I think I'm a piece of shit, because I'm not good enough. Okay, those are inner reasons. You just want to clarify so far. We don't want to attack your insecurities or anything. You just want to figure out where does the limitation comes from. Whatever it is, you notice where does that come from, how do you phrase that in your head when you think about why I can't achieve what I want, what is the reason, the way you have to clarify that reason for yourself, and then you ask yourself what stops it from becoming easier. The whole language behind this is important, it comes from the Milton model. What stops it from becoming easier? Because transformative verbs like become or making it easier to change a belief or any statement, a limiting statement. What stops you right now from designing a plan that would get this project much easier for you? Then, what would happen if you had already done it successfully? How would you look at that challenge if you had already succeeded at crossing all the barriers, at facing all your insecurities, at facing the rejection, the rebuttals, all the people who tell you you're a piece of shit? Okay, once you have gotten past all of those things, how do you look at the situation? If you look at it from that perspective of having already succeeded, you are going to have a phrase coming up in your head. Like, well, it doesn't matter anyway, it was easier than I thought. Whatever is the thing that pops up in your mind at this moment, you remember that. Because that can become your affirmation whenever you think you won't succeed, whenever you think people are achieving this much better than you do, whenever you think you are behind in life, whatever, you just remember that phrase. What would you tell yourself if you knew you had already succeeded at this? And finally, if the very first step that you need to complete, that you need to cross so that this personal project is finally achieved, if that very first step you need was crystal clear for you right now, then what would it look like? What would it be if you perfectly knew the very first thing you need to do right now? What would it look like? What would it be? And what would it look like? What would it feel like once you have crossed that step? Once you have crossed the first step, the second step will appear bright in your head. If you try to figure out the whole process ahead before starting, that is most likely not going to happen. Once you have crossed all of those steps and you have accomplished a very tough challenge, something that was difficult for you, then you grow in confidence because you know you have done at least one thing that was very challenging, one thing you once thought you could not accomplish. Once this is done, it builds up your sense of self-worth, and you can keep developing that sense of self-confidence by achieving bigger and other challenges. In any other areas, it doesn't have to be only in the same space all the time, it doesn't have to be only in your physical shape or only in your career, it can be in anywhere you want. Just keep challenging, growing your skills in things that are relevant for you, and your confidence will definitely build up. So the idea of reframing here is to keep elaborating on the reasons that prove to me that I can't achieve the one thing that is really relevant for me. This is where you apply reframing. You don't try to apply reframing by numbing your pain or numbing your suffering or numbing all the reasons why you feel insecure. Let's stay away from that and reframing only the reasons why you think you can't grow in something personal. Once you establish a better relationship with your own feelings, your own perception of yourself, then what people say about you don't affect you as much anymore. Because you're like, well, I'm on my path anyway, they are on their path, and whatever is the reason, if they start complaining about me or if they start criticizing me, it means they are projecting something suffering inside them onto me. In that case, why do you argue? Like, they're just projecting their bag of shit on you. So let them, away from you, let them project on whatever they want and keep going on your path. That is the best advice I can have to develop self-confidence. If you want to have some more tips about this and how to use neuro-linguistic programming to develop NCORs or use the submodalities to develop more sense of self-worth and keep moving on in life, you have a small document down below called The Fundamentals of NLP that I wrote a few years ago. It will give you the essential foundations for whenever you want to break the leap or close the distance in one project you have in life. How do you become more productive, confident, or motivated, or whatever you want in that project? You have this document down below if you want to download it. And in the meantime, I tell you thank you for watching, thank you for being here on this channel, and I will see you soon again in the next video. Thank you.